This is the next in our series of conversations with Dr. Deeply Cogent. Dr. Cogent is Director of Dialogue for the Institute for Conflict Resolution Through Communication. Today, Dr. Cogent will be taking us on a tour of the chart, which is a graphical metaphor for the processes involved in Dr. William Glasser's choice theory. I hear from our remote crew that Dr. Cogent is ready for us. Good day, Dr. Cogent.
And a good day to you too, Monica. It's good to be with you again. Remember, just call me Deep. I'm actually kind of a shy and humble guy.
Okay, Deep. I also think you are a bit of a tease. Tell us what you're going to be discussing with us today.
We've made reference a number of times in our past visits to choice theory and Dr. William Glasser. Dr. Glasser has thought through an interesting graphical schematic for how our brain and sensory systems operate in directing our behavior. At first glance, it may seem a bit busy, yet there's a great deal contained within this busyness. It's sort of like a map. If you're not familiar with the territory that the map represents, it won't make much sense. However, the more you study the map and see how it applies to the territory, the more the connections are made between the symbols on the map and the reality. These connections help us deepen our understanding of what we are studying, which is basically ourselves and why we do what we do.
I see what you mean. On first glance, it does look busy, as you put it. Can you walk us through it so that we can better understand what it represents?
Certainly. Let's start with the brain and the recognition that all that we do is driven by our basic needs. The most basic of these needs, of course, is survival and is resident within our more primitive brainstem. The instinctive needs of fight or flight, hunger, reproduction, etc. are programmed into this part of our brain and really don't require much thought for them to direct our behavior.
That's interesting. You're saying that we actually have sort of like two brains?
Yes. A neuroanatomist could give you a much more complete explanation, but for our purposes, we will simply talk about our old brain and our new brain. Our new brain contains the genetic instructions that direct our basic needs, that in turn direct our behavior. As we go along, this will become more clear.
Would it be safe to say that our new brain is what distinguishes humans from animals?
Yes. That's a good insight. You're a very good student. We mentioned the genetic instructions that form the other four basic needs according to Dr. Glasser. These needs are love and belonging, taken as one need, power, freedom, and fun. The love and belonging need is clear to most people. We all have this need to love and be loved. This is what drives us in seeking connections with other people. Power has many meanings. The meaning that we intend here could be described as competence, self-efficacy, and effectiveness in dealing with life's challenges. In this sense, power would be the opposite of being a victim of life. Freedom is our gift from God that invites us to be all that He made us to be and is the need that enables us to make choices as we go through life. Fun, as it is meant here, is more than fun and games. One of the ways that I meet my fun needs is by learning. We can learn from children in this. Play is a child's work, and it is one of the most important ways that we learn, not only as children, but throughout life.
These are encouraging concepts. I've never thought of fun as a basic need or of learning as being fun, but as I think about it, I can connect with what you're saying.
You're experiencing the value of theory. A good theory helps us make sense of life's experience. That's why choice theory seems to be helpful to many people.
Okay, I think I understand these basic needs. How do these needs fit with the rest of the chart?
These basic needs are the key to understanding most of our behavior. We form pictures in our mind of what it would take to meet these needs. These pictures are what make up our quality world. For most of us, our mother was the first one to meet our needs, so we put her picture in the quality world. As life moves on, we form more of these images in our quality world. We form an image of our mate, present or future. We form images of how we want to use our life and talent and time and energy. It is the realization of these pictures in our quality world that drives most of the choices that we make. Getting these needs met give us a sense of satisfaction and happiness. When some people are not able to get the good feelings that result from fulfilled needs, they often turn to addictions, unloving sex, and violence.
Wow, that is an interesting explanation for what's happening in our world today. Are you saying that not being able to get their basic needs fulfilled is what causes people to become addicted? And what were those other two?
Addictions, violence, and unloving sex.
Can you develop that idea a bit? Maybe give us an example.
Certainly. Let's start with violence. As we seek to understand the tragedy of Columbine and other school shootings, one element that seems to be consistent with the shooters is that they were loners, disconnected from peers and family. They evidently were not getting their needs met within their social culture, so violence became a choice for them.
How sad.
Dr. Glasser suggests that we spend as much time and energy in reaching out to these at-risk kids as we spend in metal detectors and security systems. But I digress. Addictions are another way to feel good when we are not getting the good feelings we need from being connected with others. Addiction has been likened to holding a candle under a thermostat to get the desired temperature. It has also been described as an illicit love affair with a substance. The tragedy of addiction is that it drives the addict further and further from the connections with people that he needs in order to find life meaningful.
Whoa, heavy stuff. Okay, what's next?
Okay, let's move to the other end of the chart now. The blue area represents the real world that exists regardless of our interaction with it. Each of us relate to this real world through our sensory system. Let's spend a bit of time with this insight into the two worlds we live in. As we encounter the world outside of ourselves that we'll call the real world, it's good to realize that this world exists regardless of our interaction with it. It existed before we were born and will probably be there long after we are gone. Our experience of that world is limited to our senses. We can liken our sensory system to the lens on this camera. It brings in information and by various means translate what it sees into information that can be stored within the camera. This image of the world within the camera is what we will call our perceived world. It is this internal representation of the real world that is most real to us, and it is our responses and reactions to this perceived world that determine our behavior. Think of the story of the blind man and the elephant to realize just how their perceived world affected their behavior, and especially their relationship to their fellows. This could be a teaching in itself. What positive lesson can be learned from the blind men, and what suggestions could we offer to help them get a better grasp of their real world containing the elephant?
You know, I've heard that story before, but I'd never thought of it in the way you're suggesting. It is a good illustration of the difference between the real world of the elephant and their individual and limited perceived world. Each of them was convinced that his perception was the only way to view the elephant, and all they could do was argue about their different perceptions.
Excellent, Monica. You have a good grasp of what we're discussing. Let's move along now to our walk through the chart. Our senses take in information from the real world and process that information, first of all, through our total knowledge filter. This filter represents the internal and usually unconscious process of sorting the input from our senses. Our sensations are sorted into three categories: what we already know, and what we recognize, and what we are unfamiliar with and want to learn more about, for instance, that strange noise under the hood of our car, and stuff that has no meaning or interest to us.
When you stop to think about it, our brain is doing a lot with all the information that comes at us every day.
Yes, and as I mentioned, most of this is going on without us being consciously aware of it. As the information from the outside world passes through our total knowledge filter, it is then evaluated by our values filter, which holds representations of what is in our quality world. The values filter further sorts the sensation into something useful to getting our needs met, or something actually opposed to getting our needs met, or just neutral information. Monica, I think we've taken up all the time that's been allowed for this portion of our talk. Can we continue the rest of the chart the next time we get together?
Of course, Dr. Cogent. I realize you have many pressures on your time. We do appreciate the time you spend with us. So the next time we'll take up the chart from where we left off, as we're just about to enter the perceived world. Until next time then, this is Monica Hannon, Special Reporter, signing off. We were about to start discussing the perceived world component of the chart. I was thinking about what you said about the perceived world being more real than the real world. That comment reminded me of the film The Matrix. Do you see any similarities?
Now that's an interesting and very astute connection. The Matrix may be an extreme example of the perceived world being manipulated by sinister forces. As I recall, the people were operating in a total illusion controlled by a giant computer program that evidently bypassed their ordinary sensory apparatus and was able to directly impact the collective perceived world of the population. Another illustration might be Plato's allegory of the cave. Many have seen the similarities between this story and The Matrix. In both The Matrix and The Cave, it was the task of the good guys to help bring those bound by the prison of their illusions into the light of the real world. Very much like Jesus inviting his followers to learn the truth and be set free. Let's focus for a moment on the quality world as a part of our perceived world. It is made up of those perceptions of people, situations, things, and systems of belief that have been found to be particularly need-satisfying as we have lived our lives. While very important, this quality world is just a small part of the total perceptions that have filled our total perceived world.
So the quality world contains pictures of what we believe will best meet our needs. You named 3 areas. 1, the people we want and need to be close to. 2, the things that we want and experiences we want. And 3, the values and beliefs that direct our behavioral choices.
Yes. You notice that there's a picture of a mother in the quality world. Our mother was the first one to meet our needs, so her picture is there. As we grow, other images form that represent what we have learned will meet our needs. We form pictures representing those relationships, experiences, achievements, as well as those material things that meet our needs. Our values and beliefs are a major component of this quality world. We have images of what constitutes the good life, lived according to our convictions. These images are a large part of what directs our choices. We move toward what we want.
What happens when we experience something that not only does not meet our needs, but that might keep us from getting our needs met?
This question brings our focus to the comparing place illustrated by the scales in the chart. Let's look at an example. Imagine you have lunch date with a friend, and this friend is very much a part of your quality world. Let's say that as part of this date, your friend promised to bring you the key to his lake cabin where you and your family are to be his guest for a long weekend. You and your family have a real need to get away and recharge your batteries. You had agreed to meet at 1 p.m. on Friday. It's now 1:30 and there is no sign of your friend. Clearly, this is a frustrating situation. This frustration triggers any number of behaviors that will be directed to gaining some effective control over the situation. These behaviors might range from a phone call all the way to a trip to your friend's home or office. Another situation might be a bit more subtle. Let's say you were raised in a Christian family. Your understanding of the spiritual realm is that God and his angels exist in some place other than earth, a place that you call heaven. You see the world as having 2 stories, as it were. Then a teacher you respect tells you that the world is only 1 story, that God and his angels and the spiritual realm coexist in the same dimension with mortal man. This produces a major tilt in the comparing place.
I've heard of cognitive dissonance. Is this what you're describing?
Yes, I suppose it is. When we are confronted with information that is not consistent with or actually contradicts previously held beliefs, there is an internal dissonance that drives us toward some behavior that will resolve the dissonance. These frustration signals take us to our behavioral suitcase that contains what we have learned throughout life to deal with life's challenges.
How do the behaviors in the behavioral suitcase get there?
They are the total collection of what we have learned throughout life to get our needs met. Some of these behaviors are effective, some of them are not, in the sense that they become obstacles in our relationships. In the case of the missing friend, the behaviors are fairly obvious. Find out where he is and what happened. In the case of cognitive dissonance, it may become more difficult. This is where an ineffective behavior might be selected, such as rejecting the source of the conflicting information. In this case, it would not be helpful to the relationship.
What if there's no learned behavior to deal with a frustration signal? Then what?
Fortunately, we are wonderfully creative in dealing with life. If we don't have a behavior we have already learned, we go to work and develop something that will work. A dentist friend of mine told me of an experience with one of his patients. This patient was being given the standard lecture on oral hygiene, floss and brush, floss and brush. It was clear to the dentist when he walked in the room that the patient was totally tuned out. Not wanting to add to the problem by reverting to old learned patterns, he creatively simply asked the patient why he would want to do what the hygienist was recommending. The patient then repeated all the reasons that flossing would benefit him. It was clear that repeating the old behavior of the lecture was not as effective as simply trying something new and asking the patient what he wanted and what he valued. This leads us to the concept of total behavior, which some people find a little difficult at first.
I'm curious about the name total behavior. Tell us about that.
This is Dr. Glasser's way of recognizing that all behavior is total and interrelated. The components of total behavior